3, 2, 1.
Voice with Julia, change your voice, change your life.
Hi everyone, and welcome to Voice with Julia's Technique Talks, where we demystify conversations surrounding vocal technique with behind-the-scenes access to great singers of today. I'm your host, Julia Radosh, and with me here today is coloratura soprano Katrina Galka. Hi, Katrina. So glad to have you here.
Oh, thank you for having me, Julia.
Great. So I'm going to read you a little bit about this amazing woman's career. She began the 2019-20 season. She returned to the Wiener Staatsoper to reprise Fritzi in 𝐚𝐜𝐿𝐧𝐝-𝐬𝐿, following her debut with the company in the work's world premiere last season. She sang first performances of The Controller and Dove's Flight with Minnesota Opera, as well as returned to the Las Vegas Philharmonic for Handel's Messiah. She also added the roles of Serpetta in Ariadne auf Naxos and the charmeuse in Thais for performances at Arizona Opera and Utah Opera, respectively, but they were canceled due to COVID-19. Future engagements include a role and company debut at the Opernhaus Zurich. And Katrina has also performed with companies such as Atlanta Opera, Opera San Jose, New Orleans Opera, Minnesota Opera, Glimmerglass Festival, Caramore Festival, Portland Opera, Arizona Opera, Opera Theater of St. Louis, Dallas Opera, and Odyssey Opera. Her repertoire includes Luncheon, Serpetta, Gilda, Elvira, Adina, Cunegonde, Rosina, Vogelinda, and Papagena. On the concert stage, she has joined the Rhode Island Civic Chorale, Las Vegas Philharmonic, Oregon Symphony, and in repertoire such as Handel's Messiah, Fauré's Requiem, and Bach's St. John's Passion. She premiered Jake Heggie's Pieces of 9/11 as the girl soprano with Mr. Heggie at the piano. She has earned numerous singing awards, including 3-time regional award winner in the Metropolitan National Council audition, first place winner of the Mario Lanza Scholarship, and further awards from the National Opera Association Vocal Competition and the Marcello Giordani International Vocal Competition. That's amazing, Katrina. You've done like such great things.
Oh my gosh. Hearing you read all that, I was like, wow, I guess I've been busy. Oh my gosh. It all happened over a long time.
Not that long. You're pretty young. That's awesome. So cool. So, you know, I just really admire your singing, and I want to state for the record, one of the first things I haven't gotten to hear you live, unfortunately, but I'm sure the day will come. But I watched your Caro nome, and the ease and the beauty that with which you can sing that is just like really astounding to me. So I wanted to have you on here so we can talk about your fantastic technique and artistry.
Oh, thank you. I will say Caro nome, I'm glad it can look easy because it is not. It's like walking a tightrope for sure.
Oh yeah.
Sopranos probably feel that way.
Yeah. Oh, that is for sure. I mean, in the days that I did sing Gilda, that was, yes. I was like, okay, here we go.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's funny looking back when I did it on stage, because I've sung the aria so many times, but when I was doing it on stage, I actually, like, before that scene, because that's like, you know, the big moment, and like the first time that she comes on, like it all just kind of leads into that aria. And I would just be there backstage thinking, like, I don't know if I'm like, what if I sing the cadenza out of tune? That was always my biggest fear. Like, what if I sing it out of tune? And I just like had to be like, no, that's not going to happen. Like, it's going to be in tune, because there's no other way to go out there and do it unless you're just like totally committed and confident and like ready to do it.
Yeah, yes, that is for certain. What, actually, I'm just curious, what for you is that, well, besides the cadenza being in tune, what for you are some of the mental post-it notes you put in your mind when you're singing that aria?
That's a cool question. For me, I would say anything in the, like on top of the staff. So like when I'm thinking E, F, F sharp, even like, yeah, even like D, E flat, I would be thinking like, I need to keep this space very narrow and tall. So that's kind of what I'm thinking as far as the vowel goes. I'm trying to think of like tall vowel in a narrow space so that I don't like overblow the air. And then that's the other piece, is like keeping the breath consistent and not pushing on those moments. Because a lot of the aria sits up there, and that's where it gets tricky too. Like that's where you're holding these notes and waiting for the orchestra to finish, so that then you can lead into like a little cadenza or something like that. And you want to set yourself up well for those moments. So the last thing you want to do is be like, oh, driving the sound, or breaking it up or spreading the vowel. So that's probably the biggest post-it note. And then I'm trying to think, I think the rest would be like on the cadenzas, just go. Not trying to micromanage, and in those moments, just like trusting and just like, all right, here we go. We're jumping off a cliff and we're flying, and it's, you know, meet you at the bottom.
Yeah, exactly. That now actually that brings us into a really, and I kind of going out of order of my normal trajectory, but I really want to start at the passaggio. And you said you were thinking about narrowing your vowels. So can you talk to me about what's your process in doing that? What do you think of? What do you feel? Are there specific vowels you use? Embouchure, anything?
Yeah, no, it's a cool question. It's cool for me because I have these ways that I think about it, and I don't even necessarily always, you know, put it into words. So when I think of narrow vowel, the image that I create in my head is like whatever the vowel may be. If it's an ah, I always think of like the IPA, like the Italian A, and then I literally think of it like it's on a taffy pole and it's being stretched. I don't know why, but that really works for me, as far as just like imagining like, and maybe it has something to do with like creating space and like lifting the soft palate. But that is very helpful for me. And then also like keeping that placement of the vowel in a higher place, I think.
Yeah.
And again, like when I think of it as pulled in that way, I think that it keeps me from, again, overblowing. It's right. It's like, it's as if you're singing. It's again, like that imagery of like a long column or a straw that only so much air can go through, through as you're singing that particular vowel. So I don't know why, but that image is just what comes into my mind. So even if it's like, yeah, like an A, I would think like IPA A. I don't know which way the camera's going to make this go.
Yeah,
right. I just like think of it as being like really stretched, and who knows why. That's just how my brain works. Yeah.
Yeah. So does that, when you said that there's a higher placement, what is that? What is that higher placement to you?
Yeah, that's a good question too. I think that when we're singing in, it's tough. It's just like as if the vowel just lives like up here more so in the mask, as opposed to like down and feeling the sensation and feeling the sound living more in your mouth or jaw. I had a teacher who explained this to me years ago, Penelope Beatsis, and at the time it didn't really make sense to me, but she said, like, you want to imagine that you have a C curve here at your jaw, and you want to, like, when you're, as you're going up, you want the sound to kind of go like that, if that makes sense. Like, that's where you're going to send the sound. She explained it much better than that. But I just had that realization like a couple weeks ago as I was practicing. I realized, oh, you know, this is good because it keeps my jaw back, as opposed to us singing the high notes to like have the jaw jut forward, which then like brings all the space down, like you lose that upper resonance. So I don't know, that's like a little bit of a convoluted way of explaining that. But when I'm thinking of that high resonance, I'm thinking up like that.
Okay.
Like a C curve that goes up into my upper cheekbones, like close to my eyes, I guess.
And do you feel sensations here?
Do I feel sensations there? A little bit, yeah, definitely.
A little bit, okay. Depends on where it is in the range, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, definitely. Yeah. When you start getting above the staff, you're going to feel like lots of sensation here.
Yeah. Okay. And so no, so the vowels, when you modify in the passaggio, or we're talking about the second passaggio, just for listeners who are out there. So when you modify, you don't think to change the vowel, you just think you're going to stretch it. Is that correct?
That's what I'm thinking. And because
Yeah.
for me, I don't want to think too much about modifying the vowel because I actually want to keep my tongue position as true to the vowel as I can. Because for
Mm-hmm.
me, my tendency is to pull my tongue back, especially as I start going higher through the passaggio. So that's why I think I like this mental concept of stretching the vowel, while at the same time like trying to maintain the tongue position and like jaw position of the original vowel in the lower part of my voice.
Okay. Okay.
So that's my conception of it.
No, I like that. And actually, I kind of want to go into how you think about tongue position. And you said your tongue tends to pull back. Maybe if you could tell me how you sort of knew that that was something that your tongue wanted to do, like maybe earlier on in your training, and how you worked with that, or if that's a consistent thing that you work with kind of when you meet your voice every day. What's your process with the tongue and the jaw?
I know. Yeah. Well, I think like there are visual cues. So for me, I can see frequently, like I can see my tongue shaking if I record into a video, or I could see my jaw, like, I mean, I can tell if I turn my head a little bit to the side and I sing, I can tell if my jaw is like jutting out or if it's more relaxed and neutral. And for me, I have a really strong jaw. So that like always becomes, every time I work with a new teacher, it's like, let's just get that out there. You have a strong jaw. And I'm always like, I know. Not a surprise. I think like that's the funny thing, right? When we talk about these things with our voices, like we know our voices so intimately. It's not like usually when teachers tell us these things, it's like, I know, now what, right?
Right, exactly.
So anyway, yeah. Wait, now you have to remind me the question.
No, so tongue and jaw position, like, so you said you feel your jaw kind of, or you try to make sure that it's, yeah, and how you work with that, if that's an everyday kind of thing, or if that's like you had a moment in time where you had to deal with these things in a really aggressive sort of way.
I think it's just been an overtime thing because my
Okay.
voice has always worked, right? Like
Yeah.
it's not like it was ever not able to get through the rep and sing the notes and do all of those
Yeah.
things. And so I think when that's the case, you just kind of, you make peace with what you're able to do in the moment, knowing that there's always more.
Yeah.
And I think even when our voices aren't doing everything that we want them to do, that's part of the acceptance of the moment, right? Because if we're always fighting ourselves, we will make it harder to have that growth that we ultimately are working toward.
Yeah.
So for me, that's worked. I would say other clues for me as far as like daily work with my jaw and tongue tension, putting my thumb under here, and if I'm singing and it's particularly rigid or stiff, like, okay, my tongue is definitely involved because that's, the base of my tongue muscle there. So
Yeah.
I can tell from that.
Yeah. Yeah. And then what do you do when you tell? Can you physically relax it, or do you try a different position? What do you do?
Yeah. I'll try to like physically relax it. That doesn't always work, as we know. So yeah, trying different positions is really helpful. I'll do an exercise where I will try to incorporate different consonants that will involve my tongue, so that I'm building flexibility. So in the moment, I may still have some rigidness, right? I think I recognize that oftentimes in the moment, like I may not see the final result that I ultimately want, and that's okay. But I think to myself, what would I do in this moment to improve this for the future? And then I just commit to doing that and kind of trusting the process. So I think to myself, okay, if my tongue is rigid, what could help? Maybe incorporating some different consonants, and improving like flexibility there and moving my tongue position around, singing different vowels, things like that. I don't know. I'm pretty like with my practicing and warm-ups, I'm pretty fluid. Like I just kind of try to like feel what's happening and then think to myself, where am I on this pendulum? And if I'm over
Yeah.
here, let's say like, I feel like my tongue is it is pulling back, right? Like I might just think to myself, what would be the opposite? What could I do that will bring me over here and bring my tongue more forward? And I just kind of respond intuitively and kind of experiment and try things out. And I'm sure not everything is, perfect, but I think that that's part of the process too, is in the experimentation, we find what does work, and then we go with that.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. I'm just curious, what consonants do you like to loosen up your tongue?
I don't like any. No.
Yeah, right?
No, I'll do like, oh gosh, I'm like, I didn't even warm up today. I'll do like ka, ga, lam, and then I'll do like ma to just bring the breath forward. Yeah, and I'll sing through on a single vowel.
Yeah, right. So I'm going to come back to breath in a moment, but this is a really good place to start talking about registration, I think. So I'd love to get your thoughts on how you think of the registration of your voice. How many registers do you feel it has? How does it function in each register? Do you even think of the voice having different registers?
Yeah, so I would probably say I would split my voice into 3 registers. I mean, we have like chest, but there's so many like in between little moments and transitions. So if I was saying 3, I'm being super broad, right? I'm really just thinking like, okay, I have this chest sensation that feels very different from my middle voice, which then feels very different from whistle. But within middle voice itself, like there's all different kinds of placement and requirements and sensations. But to me, I would say middle voice going from like, let's say F, right above middle C, to probably around like B, like high B.
Yeah.
That to me feels pretty much all very similar.
Okay.
As far as how I try to think about it and approach it.
Okay. So really, so you feel that there aren't too many adjustments you have to make between that F above middle C to the B below high C? You feel like you could just kind of sing that through?
That's kind of what I try to go for. Yeah, it feels very
that's awesome.
Connected to me. But I've worked to get there. I wouldn't say that was always true. Yeah. Right.
Right. Okay. And so then the whistle register, how do you use that in your repertoire?
Sure. I mean, oftentimes I have to use it like all the time. So for me, I think I told you this when we've talked a little bit before. There was a period, I mean, I've always had really high notes and whistle tone ever since I was in high school. But there was a period when I was doing young artist programs and I wasn't really using that part of my voice. And then when it came time to use it again, I really was a little bit at a loss. Like it felt kind of like hit or miss and I didn't know what I was doing. And what I've discovered is for me, like, because my voice is high and I do have those notes, a lot of it for me has to do with trust. And then like for me, a lot of release. So if I try to like push those notes out, it tends to create a lot of tension, which makes sense and makes it very difficult. So when I think about singing up there, I kind of think as though I'm flipping into whistle. It feels like a totally different sense. It's a totally different sensation. And that's why I do consider it like its own register for sure. And so what I've been working on is really releasing any kind of tension I hold in my shoulders, in my neck, in my jaw. And the first time when I'm warming up and going up there, I'll do scales and I'll really just think about just letting the voice do whatever it wants. And it might feel really airy and unfocused. And that frequently is how it feels when I first start singing up there.
Yeah.
And then like, I'll just warm again, like then instead of a full scale, I'll maybe do smaller bits of the scale. So I'll do like you know, do, re, mi, fa, mi, re, do, but like going up through that passaggio through whistle. And I just feel like, okay, now I'm working with a smaller portion of my range, and I can, that way, when those transitions happen, it's not so vast as it is in a scale, and I'm able to focus on how do I want this resonance to feel. Like I go a lot by feel.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. Do you feel a difference? Because, you know, we're talking about Gilda earlier. Do you feel a difference maybe between the Caro nome, like the little whistle tones in the cadenza, da, 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 versus the storm scene, like the high D and the storm scene? Do you feel a difference where the voice is placed for those top tones?
That's a great question, because I think that is a tricky thing probably for a lot of coloratures or a lot of sopranos with like an extension that sing that. You kind of have a choice, at least for me, like especially on D, like in that area, I could bring a lot more weight up and kind of try to like do the and you want to do that after the storm scene, right? It's
exactly.
like, oh, it's so dramatic. You just want to scream. And whereas with Caro nome, I would say I would definitely be flipping into a lighter mechanism, which I consider whistle to be a lighter mechanism, just for like ease and facility and all of that. And it even just like from the mood of the piece, like it's this intimate moment. It doesn't call for a ton of sound. Everything's quiet and it's her moment. So yeah. So that's one of those moments you kind of get to choose. Although I will say that something I'm working on with my own voice, working on trusting, is being able to flip into what feels very much like whistle to me. Like it feels very small and thin. But what I'm learning is that there's actually a lot of resonance there, and it can carry and cut and have a lot of volume and color without needing to like really bring all that weight up and effort my way through. So I think when I did it, I probably brought a lot of weight up, but I would say now if I were to do the role again, I would probably play around with approaching it with more of a whistle mix, maybe. Just see what you think of it. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, I know. There are options, especially when you have a higher instrument. You can choose to do different things. Yeah.
It's kind of cool.
So now, what about chest voice? How do you feel that plays into your whole range?
Chest voice is super important. And this is something like every great teacher I've ever worked with has told me time and time again, right? Like, of course, like you start with your middle, and when the middle is free and healthy, then the extensions grow from there. But yeah, I mean, chest voice, if you have a strong, healthy chest voice, that is very connected to, I think, having that freedom in the whistle range. So for me, I don't have the strongest chest voice, and I don't have a super low voice. And unfortunately, for some reason, all these composers who wrote for coloratures like always put in these low notes below the staff, and I'm like, really, guys? But I think for me, like working, you know, I do always warm up my chest voice, and I do it, you know, I'll do a little bit of middle, and then I'll work into chest, then I'll make my way up and I'll go into whistle, and then I will actually come back down and sing into my chest voice again.
Okay.
I like doing that because it also informs me, like, how have I approached my whistle? Did I bring a lot of tension? Like, was I bringing more tension up into the top? Because if I have done that, I will have trouble singing into my chest voice.
Yeah.
So for me, in a warm-up, it's super informative, and it lets me know, it's just like a check-in, like, how am I doing here? Especially because, you know, when you're traveling and you're on the road, you're not checking in with the teacher every week. Maybe things will change now with everybody teaching on Zoom. I don't know. It's kind of cool.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. But traditionally, I wasn't taking lessons with the teacher every week, and so you get used to checking in with yourself. So that's probably how I mainly use chest voice. And then when I'm singing down there, I do have to remind myself not to push. and to just trust. I think it's Rochelle Yonk, or she talks about like this elephant trunk. And I like thinking about that as I go down into chest. I find that that's helpful for just, again, like focusing the sound and the vowel.
Yeah. 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 She does like elephant trunk, squirrel tail. Squirrel tail, elephant. Yeah.
Yeah. I like those a lot. They've always resonated with me. I'm like, I feel that when I'm singing.
Totally. Me too. That's awesome. So now let's go into breath a little bit. First of all, where does that rate on your consciousness scale? Like, obviously breath's important. We're not saying that, but is that in the forefront of your brain when you're singing?
It used to be like a big concern. And for me, I find that when I was thinking about it, because my thinking had a lot of resistance, and I was telling myself, like, I don't want to run out of air. Do I have enough air? Is it moving? Is it free? It was all of these questions that were actually like very much based in a kind of negative thinking space. So it wasn't useful to me. It created a lot of tension and resistance because I was thinking of it with a total lack of trust. It was like, I don't really feel comfortable with this part of my singing. And so I need to like keep a vigilant eye on it. Right. And what I've found is that keeping the vigilant eye on it kind of makes it rebel more.
Oh yeah.
Right? Like, it's funny, like with our singing, I think we see a lot of relationship dynamics actually at play. So what I've learned is like, I'm going to let my breath take care of itself. I know how to breathe. Are there moments when I do want to think about my breath and give it attention? Like, absolutely. But if I don't want to make it like a constant concern. So what I've learned is to kind of let it be, unless there are just, specific moments when I need to give it attention. And I only do that when I'm practicing. And then when it comes to performing, if I need to breathe somewhere, I will just surrender to that, and it's okay,
Right.
Yeah.
No one's going to die. It's going to be okay. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
Now, do you think, because you're talking about breath, and I just want to clarify, do you consider that the same as support, or are they different feelings for you?
I think for me, this is a great question, and I've never thought about it or verbalized it. So I may change my mind someday, but right now, I feel like they are connected, but a little bit different. And I think that now that you asked me this, it becomes more clear to me that when I was thinking of breath as support, it created tension. So when I think of my breath as energy and just something that is constantly moving and present, that serves me a lot better. And then when I think of support, the way I think about it right now is kind of like this bell pull. This is something another teacher told me once. But it's like, if we have like our windpipe going down, let's just imagine it's going like dead down the center of our bodies. And if I was going to like pull on that, like, I guess from between my legs, like, that's where I would want to feel support. But I want that support to be like in the center of my body, because for me, I was often like thinking of support as like the breath, and then I was pushing against my stomach to create some kind of resistance with the breath, or I would like pull in, or it was like a lot of external machinations to control what I thought was happening with my breath. And for me, that wasn't so useful. So I guess now I have these kind of two separate conceptions. And I think now I feel I feel a connection to support in a natural way for most of my voice. And perhaps then, end of phrases, and then the extremes of my voice is when I would start to think about the bell pull, or like that centering of some kind of healthy tension, or like some kind of engagement. I think engagement.
Okay. And is that engagement in, or is that engagement out? Or is that just engagement in general?
I think for me, it's like I said, like that pull, it's like a pull down.
Oh, it's a pull down. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
For me.
So that pull that you described, it's going down the head through the center of the body and is pulling down. Okay. Yeah,
And that
I like
works
that
for
image.
me because I tend to lift
Mhm.
as I'm singing, like
Yep.
my energy gets high and everything gets high and my voice is getting higher
Yeah.
most of the time. And so for me, like I really like that pull down because it grounds.
Yeah.
When people talk about grounding and
Yeah.
stuff, that's so elusive and often still is to me. But I think that this image for me is that connection to my conception of grounding.
Yeah. And you're talking about that, and I'm thinking, like, in Ayurveda, there's the different types, and there's like the vata, like the energy that's up and this
Yeah.
way, and then that image just like sort of, keeps everything in balance, because
Yes.
obviously you need that element as well. So yeah, that's awesome. So now I'd love to talk a little bit about your journey as a singer. And I know this is like hard to remember, but what you can remember, maybe walk me through the beginning and then critical points in your development and what you felt you had to work on technically. What were some of the challenges, and how you overcame them, if you can remember these things, and I'll sort of lead you through it as we go. So let's take me all the way back. When did you first start singing?
Whew. I was always singing at home quietly when I thought no one was listening. And then I was singing, like I started learning how to belt and like doing mixed belt stuff in high school. And I kind of just taught myself that by listening to, I think I listened to a lot of Barbara Streisand, and imitating her. And I just love her still to this day. But then I got to college and I was studying classical voice. And I did really well. I had a teacher who was really about kind of intuitive singing and just, trusting your breath and letting things go. And I had a pretty natural instrument, so I think that it was a good fit. And then I think, over time, as I started to learn more about classical music and singing, and I had a master class with someone and they gave me all this feedback that was helpful and came from a good place, but was very focused on everything that was wrong with my voice. And that was the first time I had really gotten feedback in that way. And it kind of like really derailed me. So that was near the end of my senior year of undergrad. And I had at the same time been applying to all these grad schools, and auditions hadn't been going well because I was nervous. And to be honest, I didn't really have a conception of a real technique. My teacher was great. She was letting me respond intuitively to my instrument. But then under nerves, I didn't have tools to turn to. And so, so grad school auditions were a little rough. I got into one school, it was Boston University. And so what had happened, I guess, like in that senior year time was I was told I needed to connect to that support because I was a coloratura and I had a really light, floaty instrument. And for an opera career, you do need a little more, you need to be able to carry over the orchestra. And people are always, especially right now, it's so popular to have like these dark, colorful sounds. And I think people have a lot of conceptions of how you get there, but that could be a conversation for another day. But, basically because of this masterclass, I was really trying to like sing these very clear vowels that were really driven through my mouth. I was really engaging my core, especially like in my solar plexus. It was so tight.
Yeah.
And that really, and then I was also trying to cover the sound as I went through the upper passaggio into my top, because I was told that my sound was really bright, which is normal, again, for a young coloratura. So
Totally.
it was just like all these things. I was messing around in my passaggio and in my middle voice and engaging all this tension. And I really like could not sing comfortably. I mean, maybe 20 minutes. And then I was exhausted because my larynx was coming up so high and I had so much tension engaged. And I couldn't really sing the top, like my whistle stuff that used to be so easy. And then I went to grad school, and I remember my first lesson just like crying to my teacher, Penelope Beatsis, and I said, I don't know how to sing. I don't know what I'm doing. This is the only school I got into. And just being like, so, I was very vulnerable, but I was honest with her. And I'll never forget her telling me, like, you know how to sing. You're not broken. And we're just gonna like realign what's going on here. And that was like, actually, I'm like gonna cry thinking about it, because it's just, I think back on that, I'm like, oh my God, she was right.
Yeah. I know, you're getting me teary-eyed too. So yeah.
She was so right. And you know, it was a year of a lot of hard work, but it paid off. And it was 1 year, and then I stayed and I studied with her for 3 years total at BU. And I would say in that time, I mean, I grew a lot. And what she talks about is a lot of, she talks a lot about resonance, and kind of vowel placement and things like that. And so she helped me get my soft palate up. And when I was able to do that, that helped create a lot of freedom. And then it was really based around singing with a lot of overtone, so that I was no longer needing to like drive the vowels in the middle voice, but that I was trusting on this other approach to create resonance and color and fullness. So that was probably my first big step in that journey.
Can I ask you a question about that? So when you were learning to sing on this overtone, as opposed to driving, what did that feel like? What was that experience for the first, if you can remember?
Oh my gosh. Well, I remember like not understanding the concept for probably about 10 months, like pretty much my whole first year of my master's degree. And what really ended up helping me was just listening to the recordings over and over and over again, and listening to what she had told me. And then just, again, like getting more comfortable playing in the practice room, because probably, to be honest, it's funny, right? But for most of those couple months, I probably was still going in the practice room doing the same old thing I had always done. And then it was only when I started like really listening and getting intentional with my practicing that I made like this super quick, it was like it just overnight, it felt like, oh, that's where it is. And of course, like, that's how I think a lot of change happens, right? It's like nothing, boom.
Yeah.
And that's because like you're putting in the work, even though you're not seeing the results necessarily. Right. But what was your original question? I get so...
No, it's okay. No, I was just asking if you remember sensations of the overtone when you first developed it.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. It feels, again, yeah, that is a hard question to answer. I'm not sure I can even remember. What I remember doing was like a lot of snorting and like thinking about feeling the breath on the back of my throat when I breathed in. Like I remember how I got there, but you know, I don't remember anymore. I think that it felt like a higher placement. If I was going to say anything, it was like I had been kind of like how we started our conversation. It was like I was singing here out of my mouth, and all of a sudden it was like I was singing up here more so. Yeah, that's probably the best way I could describe it.
Okay. Yeah. And so that was a change that helped you could then recreate that sensation when you found it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Slowly but surely. Yeah. I mean, it was
slowly.
A process. Yeah.
Of course. Of course. So now after that happened, then walk me through kind of the next step. So that was, I guess, at the end of grad school.
Yeah. So end of grad school, then I ended up going to Portland Opera as a young artist. And that for me was like a stroke of luck. Like I like to talk about this because I think that we often as young singers see people who are getting positions in young artist programs or getting opportunities. And we just think like, you know, oh, they're like oh, they were the first choice, or like, I'm never that person. But I will say like, I think that I've always just kind of like kept going, even though I got a lot of no's. So that's key. And like with Portland Opera, like I hadn't even originally sent in an application to them. I had auditioned for almost every other young artist program and made it to the finals, but gotten maybe sometimes, you know, and then gotten tons and tons of no's, and I was super discouraged. But with them, like they ended up, their soprano left at the last minute. They had a couple months, they needed to find somebody. And so I got an invitation because of somebody that knew me from a different program I'd done. And I think, you know, a lot of times that's what happens. Like we think that we need to do this path where we send in the applications and we do the audition and everyone swoons in the room and then we get the job. And like, I cannot even tell you, I maybe had 1 or 2 auditions where people got excited in the room. But for some reason, like that was always like my dream. Like if they don't swoon in the audition room, then I don't know, like, have I made it?
Right.
And I think, you know, that comes maybe with some maturity and just shifting of expectations, where you just realize that's not really what it's about, right?
Right.
But anyway, so I ended up at Portland Opera as a young artist, was doing not a ton of stuff that needed necessarily a coloratura specifically.
Mhm.
And I felt like I was singing well most of the time there. That was 2 years. And then I went on to Arizona Opera. And when I got there, I had to start singing more of my coloratura rep again. And that's when, again, I had like this, I had been singing pretty heavy in the middle voice, like, again, trying to manufacture and create a lot of roundness in the middle, and especially through that second passaggio. And so that always F's, excuse my language, F's up my whistle.
Yeah.
So again, like, I kind of, honestly, I had some struggles with that part of my voice most of the time I was a young artist at Arizona Opera. I mean, it always happened, but I was constantly wondering, do I flip? Do I bring all the weight up? It was kind of always felt like a gamble. And was a little bit scary because there wasn't a lot of trust that it was going to happen. And I think I was making it happen with a lot of tension.
Yeah.
And then when I finished as a young artist with Arizona Opera, which was now only 2 years ago, I went back home to Milwaukee and I decided to have a lesson with Julia Faulkner because she was close. She's like the best teacher I knew who was close, and she's fantastic. And so I'm really glad I did that. It's funny, you're just like, oh, this is convenient, and she's just phenomenal. And she just told me what I have been saying, like, you have those high notes, you just need to let go of all the tension. So for me, this is kind of like my life story, it seems like my life's journey, which is you have everything that you need. You just need to relax and trust it a little bit. And then once you trust it, okay, there's going to be a few adjustments. That's totally normal. But it's all about like that initial trust, because when I'm not trusting what I'm doing, I put all this stuff on top that complicates and creates barriers and resistance to the abilities that I have in truth. So that was huge for me. Yeah, she just said, just let your voice flip. Just let it flip. And it did. And she's like, that's all you need. That's all the sound you need. And it was such a foreign, free, very light feeling that that also takes a while to trust. And from there, I just have kind of continually, and she also introduced this idea for me to just be like really free and like feel very like melting, like my jaw is melting, like my shoulders are melting down, because that also helps, I think, balance a lot of my tension and kind of penchant for control. I'll admit it. Good to know. Once you know, then you can find, you know, ways to balance again.
Totally. Yeah. And, you know, I know you're really, just from following you on social media, I know you're really big into your practice process. So I'd love you to maybe talk about that a little bit.
Sure. Yeah. So for me, what I found works, and this has been a process, because I have had a lot of resistance to creating schedules for myself, especially I think because with an opera schedule, you're always at the mercy of somebody else's schedule. And so it can feel very difficult to just kind of take authority over that and say, like, this is when I'm going to show up. But what works for me is planning my week. At the end of the week, I'll plan for my next week, and I will just say, like, here are the 2 hours that I want to show up and practice. And I'll put it in my calendar, and I have to be really strict about that. Like, I have to treat that as if it's a date that I would have with like the general director of the Met, like an audition, right? Like, that's really important time. And I think that a lot of times we don't respect the appointments we make with ourselves the way that we would with somebody else. So for me, like, that was a big step. And then I do plan as well, like, what I want to work on, just because it can be hard in the moment. We don't always, at 9:30 in the morning, I don't always want to practice in that moment. But if I know what I have planned, it helps me get there better than if I were to just show up and be like, oh, okay, now where do I start? You know? And then like I'll always start with warm-ups. I really like the warm-up process. Maybe I'm a weirdo, but that part is fun for me. And then
what does that involve? What does your warm-up involve?
Yeah, I recently started using a 𝐼𝐼𝐼𝐿 ball. I'll always do yoga first. That's like my thing now that I'm obsessed with. And then it depends if let's say maybe I didn't have as much time to do a ton of yoga, then I like using this 𝐼𝐼𝐼𝐿 ball that my friend 𝐲𝐨-𝐭𝐡𝐞 talks about. And you lay on it and then you do some breathing exercises. And it really helps open up a lot of these muscles, at least for me in my torso, because I'm kind of a smaller person, especially through my torso. So for me to do that is helpful. It also, the way that he talks about it, I'm like not great at explaining it, but the way that he talks about it, it's really cool because you lean on the ball and you use your body weight against the floor, and you breathe in and out, and you'll actually try to create some resistance in your torso against the ball a few times as you're breathing in and out. And then the last one, you'll release everything as you breathe out into the ball. What I like about that is that I start to really sense this idea again of like healthy support, right? So like tension and release, which I think is so integral to our whole notion of support and our whole breath mechanism. And then like sensing like, oh, I can have a free breath independent of what's going on with all these external muscles. So that's cool. Anyway, not to get too deep into that, but so I really like that.
That's awesome.
Then I love lip trills to start. And then I'll usually start like, I'll do often like some kind of exercise on the ooh, oftentimes scalar exercises.
You like ooh. Wait, I want to ask about the lip trill. Do you have a particular flavor of lip trill that you like?
This is like the most singer question ever, and I love it. I just do it. I don't know. I just do the
Okay.
Yeah, but I had a teacher recently tell me, you know, when you're doing your lip trill, you're like jutting your chin out, and I was like, oh, of course I am. So now I do this, where I just check on my chin and make sure it's relaxed, and then I do my lip trill. Yeah. That's my new flavor of lip trill.
That's your and then with the ooh, is there a particular reason you like the ooh to start out with?
You know, light mechanism, and I think that it does actually bring in that overtone. Like if you are looking for like the sensation of the overtone, I feel like ooh is the vowel that you want to go to.
For sure. But can you describe maybe how you get that ooh? So, you know, ooh can be formed in all sorts of ways. Some more helpful than others.
True. Okay. Well, I don't know if mine is the most helpful, but again, like I am thinking about my jaw again, like for me, common thread. And then I'm not trying to overform anything with my lips, but I'm just thinking more of an internal ooh. So, ooh, I don't know. I don't know how else to explain it.
Where do you feel your tongue on the ooh?
I do feel it's definitely forward. I would not want to be pulling the tip of the tongue back ever. And it has a fairly high position in the middle, directly behind the teeth, actually. I don't know if that's helpful.
No, very helpful. Yes. No. So you use that and you take that through your range, is that correct?
Yeah, I'll do that in my middle voice.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I'll start, so I'll do some middle voice. I'll start like touching up into second passaggio, and then I will do like a few chest voice things. Like I like this cha 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 cha.
I love it.
I wasn't anticipating singing.
Oh, it's fine.
But I'll just do that in my chest voice. And then I actually do pay a lot of attention to my first passaggio between my middle and chest, because I find that's where I actually have the biggest break and the maybe the trickiest time. That is my toughest passaggio to work around. And that's why I do like ooh. Because I'll just really think about bringing as much head voice, overtone, kind of heavy, for lack of a better word, focus down in the chest. And that's how I try
Okay.
to mix into that. Yeah.
Okay. So you find it's better if you blend that head tone down rather than trying to blend is that correct? Yeah.
That's better for me, and maybe that's
Yeah.
because I come from a musical theater background where I really know how to bring the chest voice up, and that's
Oh
very
yeah.
comfortable. I can do that no problem. So for me,
Yeah.
it's like I got to focus on the other, and I find that when I have the overtones coming down and mixing into chest, I have a lot more resonance. The sound carries a lot better
Yeah.
than when I'm just relying fully on chest.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
For sure. That's awesome. Okay. So now I have to ask that we've gone through, well, actually I didn't end with the process. So you warm up. Is that kind of the end of the warm up and then you go into?
Oh, I mean, there's tons of other stuff I'll do. I'll do like all kinds of scales up. I like jumps. Like there's an exercise I've been using since undergrad, which is just an octave leap with an arpeggio. So it's easy. And I had a teacher that would use that to warm me up into whistle. And I still use that to this day to get.
So you start on the top. Is that correct? You start on the top?
No, so I'll start an octave below. So like maybe I'd start around a B, right? So I'd start, it's easy.
Oh, got it.
Being like the high B. Yeah.
Understand. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. I like that.
It's kind of fun. And when I was doing controller with Minnesota Opera, I started, in order to warm up to that high F, I started doing just, again, like that do, re, mi, fa, mi, re, do, going through through my whistle passaggio. Yeah. And I actually thought like, oh, wow, that was really effective for me. And so I continue using that.
Yeah. And so you do that on like an oo or an o, or just whatever kind of flips into.
Yeah. Once I get up that high, it's more of like just at that point, it's more just like what feels comfortable and what is going to capture the most resonance. So you might be thinking but what does it sound like? Just
right. It just sounds like whatever it is. Yeah, exactly. Just high. It just sounds high. Okay.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay. So then like when you're practicing repertoire, what kinds of things do you work on? Like, do you make a list? What do you do?
Yeah. And actually this is something I could be more specific about, but when I'm practicing, so like right now I'm learning a role. And so I just kind of am focused on, I'm going to learn these notes today. So let's say I'm learning a role. I'll first, focus on learning the notes and rhythms, bringing the language in with it. And I'll spend a lot of time I'll video record myself and I will just kind of sing through and see like, where am I holding tension? Where can I be more relaxed? So it's like just a purely technical focus. And then as I get more comfortable with the music, I feel like, then you want to bring it up to tempo. Once it gets up to tempo, you realize like, okay, I don't want to micromanage so much anymore. I want to just like feel the relaxation and just go. And then I do a lot of recording and listening back because I have learned to trust my ears, and I know how my voice works and I can tell. Yeah. And especially like with speakers nowadays, like I feel like you can hear when you're in resonance, especially if you're up close, you get this feedback and you can tell when you're out of it.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You don't have that feedback anymore. And so, I mean, of course, like for a professional recording, you wouldn't want to send that, but for practicing purposes, it's super useful. Yeah. So that's what I do.
That's awesome. So now I have to ask my signature question, and you might have already answered, but I will ask it anyways. What is your desert island vocalise? So if you have to pick one vocalise to get you ready to sing like in 5 minutes, what would it be?
Yeah, that's a good question. I actually think that I would do something totally different than all the ones I talked about. If I only had one exercise for 5 minutes, I would do like an extended scale. Okay. So I would do like, it would start like 5-note scale, then up to 9, then up to 11. Yeah. Just so like, and then I would start it with to make sure like my sound is like forward and focused. But yeah, I would like doing that because it will get my breath moving.
Mm-hmm.
It will like really, I will be singing throughout my whole range, and I'll be covering multiple passaggio. And it's like an exercise in breath control too, if you want to sing all of those scales in one breath.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's a great one. What's the vowel that you use, or maybe you use a combination, but what would be your favorite?
I would do, can I switch vowels? Am I allowed to play around?
Of course.
I would probably switch between 𝐴 and 𝐴. I like 𝐴 because I feel more free doing that, but then I feel like I would want to incorporate some 𝐴 to make sure that my tongue is like, you know, I'm getting it moving and it's coming a little more forward and up. And you know, for the purposes of a warm up, I want to be exercising all of those articulators. Right?
Exactly. Get it all in there. Pack it all into one.
Yeah,
exercise.
I know. I was like, okay, if I have one, how many things can I fit in this one?
Do you know what's funny though? Like I've been, you know, doing these interviews now and asking people this, and actually I've found I've been in a couple situations very recently that I like have to get myself ready to sing in like 5 minutes. And I'm like, oh my gosh, yeah. And you know, just something that comes up and you're like, oh, I have to sing and I've got to get things ready. And I would agree with something like that. That's my go-to sort of.
Nice.
Yeah. Just pack it all in. We're doing all the notes everywhere, all the vowels. There you go.
I love it.
That's awesome. So Katrina, where can we find you on social media and the interwebs?
Yes. So I'm on Instagram at Katrina.Galka. And that's where I post, like, I try to post every day as much as I can. And, you know, I'm doing mindset coaching as well right now. And so I'm super passionate, especially now during COVID. I know, like, it sucks. This sucks for performers and it's tough. And I think we're all looking to be flexible and look at, like, how can we share our voice in authentic ways? How can we be more brave about sharing our voices, like be it our singing voice or our speaking voice? And what I found, like a lot of that has to do with our thinking and we have so many fears that typically hold us back. And I find this, especially with women, you know, it's the system that we've been brought into. Yeah. And there's working through them does make a huge difference. I mean, it's changed my life and I see it changing my clients' lives. And so anyway, on my Instagram, I post every day, like just little, you know, words of advice or sometimes just my own musings. But I try to be active there.
That's wonderful. So your coaching is, tell us a little bit more about that. Do you have a website for that?
No, everyone keeps asking me and I really need to get it up. I haven't decided on the name of the business, and that's what's been holding me back. But yeah, I should. I will soon. Yeah.
That's awesome. So, and what do you have anything in the future that you can announce, or any online performances that we can see?
Oh, so I am preparing the impresario with 𝐸nigma Opera. Awesome. And it's going to be recorded and we're figuring all of that out. Like, how does this work on Zoom?
Fun. Yeah.
It's really cool. So that's going to be fun. And I'm singing Golden Trill. So the high soprano, the old diva.
Oh yeah.
So that's been really good. It's been keeping me busy and working on all of these technical things. Mozart will do that for sure.
Oh yeah.
And then so far, I'm still singing in Zurich. I'll be singing Olympia in the spring. So I'm so excited for that. I really hope it happens.
I think it will. That's awesome. That's so fun.
Yeah.
Will that be your first Olympia?
Yes, it will be.
Yay. That's
also
awesome.
Total technical workout.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's great because the role kind of like helps you do that. So you're like, I'm a machine and I sing like a machine.
Yeah, totally. It'll be interesting because I think the director wants her to be more humanistic, like her to be like a machine. At least that was when I auditioned for the part. That was his concept. So I don't know. It may have changed since then, but
That's
see.
awesome.
Yeah.
So if somebody wants to coach with you, where's the best place for them to contact you?
Yeah. So if you follow me on my Instagram, that is the best place. You can send me a message there.
Awesome.
Also, like, personal email is great. Just katrina.galka@gmail.com. Yeah. Thanks for asking
Awesome.
that. Yeah.
Well, I think you have so much to offer. I like just hearing you talk about how your mind works and how you work on your singing. I mean, I think that your vantage point and your perspective could be helpful to a lot of people. So that's awesome.
Thanks. Yeah.
And I thank you for sharing that, because, it's great that you're branching out even further from your art. It's like your artistry and the coaching go hand in hand.
I do feel like that is true. Yeah. I mean, I think that our voices are so intrinsically part of us and our spirit, and just what I see is my technical growth is so reflective of my own awareness of myself as a person, not just as a singer, not just my awareness of my technique, that like they all go hand in hand. And so as I start to understand, my response to triggers, even, like things like that, I start to see how that shows up in my singing. Like when I'm triggered by some feedback that somebody gives me, or my own frustration with myself, or I mean, just countless things that come up. And our voice is so interwoven with who we are, which is one of the fascinating and amazing things about being a singer. And actually, it's funny you say that, because one thing I am definitely passionate about and looking at is working with people who are actually amateur singers, and using singing as a way to build their confidence and their ability to be vulnerable.
Wow.
I think is interesting, because I think as singers, we often look at our singing as something that can become so toxic.
Yeah.
Like it can become a very, like I said, like a very toxic relationship, where it can create a lot of frustration for us, and a lot of pain. Like we hold a lot of pain around our singing and the things people have told us about our voices, and it goes on and on. And so it's kind of cool to then be working with amateurs who want to sing in order to grow. And I just think, oh man, we have that opportunity. We just gotta flip our thinking. We have to remind ourselves why we're doing it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. That's important. I think you touched on so many important things there about how your growth as a singer really is reflected in your growth as a person.
Yeah. And
vice versa. Yeah.
So.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Katrina, for being here on Technique Talks. Great to have you.
Having me. It's so nice to talk with you, and we'll have to meet in person someday soon.
Yes, exactly. When this whole pandemic kind of goes by the wayside.
It will.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, and I will see you on the interwebs.
Sounds good. Thanks, Julie.
Bye.